It was supposed to be just another routine evening for Special Agent Maya Carter. 7 months pregnant and still working cases, she was used to handling high-pressure situations. But nothing in her years of FBI training prepared her for what happened that night. Maya had just finished grabbing a quick dinner from a small cafe on the outskirts of town. The sun had set, casting an orange glow over the streets, and the air was thick with the hum of city life. As she walked to her car, she felt a strange sense of unease, an instinct honed from years of experience. She shook it off, reminding herself she wasn't on duty. Tonight she was just Maya, a woman carrying a child heading home. As she buckled herself in, flashing red and blue lights lit up her rearview mirror. A police cruiser had pulled up behind her, sirens off but lights glaring. She frowned. She hadn't done anything wrong. No speeding, no illegal parking. Still, she rolled down her window as an officer approached. The cop was tall, blonde, and had an air of authority that felt almost forced. Her name tag read, Officer Reynolds. She leaned down, her expression unreadable. "License and registration," she said flatly. Maya reached into her glove compartment, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "Can I ask why I'm being stopped, officer?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Reynolds' lips pressed into a thin line. "Just routine. Hand over your documents." Maya didn't argue. She'd been in law enforcement long enough to know that sometimes it was best to comply first and ask questions later. She handed over her ID and registration. Reynolds glanced at them, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You from around here?" the officer asked. Maya nodded. "Yes, I work in the city." She didn't immediately reveal her FBI status. No need to escalate a simple stop. Reynolds studied her face for a moment, then suddenly, her demeanor shifted. "Step out of the vehicle." Maya blinked. "Excuse me." "Step out of the car now." A knot of unease tightened in Maya's stomach. She could feel the shift in energy. Something wasn't right. "Officer, I'm pregnant. I'd prefer to stay seated unless there's a valid reason for this." Reynolds' jaw clenched. Now. Maya inhaled deeply. She had faced criminals, interrogated dangerous people, and handled life-threatening situations. But this was different. This was personal. And she could see it in Reynolds' eyes. This wasn't about a traffic stop. Slowly, carefully, she stepped out of the car, one hand instinctively resting on her belly. And that's when Reynolds reached for her cuffs. "You're under arrest." Maya's heart pounded. "For what?" The officer didn't answer. She just grabbed Maya's wrist, yanking her forward with unnecessary force. Maya stumbled, her breath hitching as she struggled to keep her balance. "Hey, be careful." "I'm pregnant," she protested, trying to steady herself. Reynolds didn't care. The metal cuffs snapped around Maya's wrists. Panic flared in her chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something else. Something much worse. And Maya had no idea how far it was about to go. Maya's breath came in short, shallow bursts as the cold steel of the handcuffs pressed against her wrists. Her pulse pounded in her ears, drowning out the distant hum of the city. She had been trained to stay calm under pressure, to control her emotions even in the most dangerous situations. But this was different. This wasn't a criminal interrogating her. This was a cop. A cop who was supposed to protect and serve. Reynolds tightened her grip on Maya's arm, her nails digging slightly into her skin. "You have the right to remain silent," she muttered, her tone almost dismissive, like she had said the words 100 times before and didn't care if Maya actually listened. Maya forced herself to stay steady. "Officer, you haven't told me what I'm being arrested for," she said, keeping her voice even. Reynolds didn't answer. Instead, she started walking, practically dragging Maya toward the police car. Maya stumbled slightly, her balance off with the extra weight of her belly. "Hey," she protested. "I'm pregnant. You can't just..." "Keep moving," Reynolds snapped. Maya clenched her jaw. Something was wrong. This wasn't just an aggressive cop on a power trip. This was personal. But why? She had never seen this woman before in her life. A few bystanders on the sidewalk had stopped to watch, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. A man took out his phone, recording the scene. Good, Maya thought. At least there would be proof. "Officer, I'm with the FBI," Maya said, hoping that revealing her position would force Reynolds to pause and reconsider. But instead, Reynolds let out a cold, humorless chuckle. "Yeah. And I'm the Queen of England." Maya felt her stomach twist. This woman didn't care who she was. Reynolds pushed her into the back of the patrol car with more force than necessary. Maya gritted her teeth as her shoulder hit the hard plastic seat. She shifted, trying to find a comfortable position, but with her hands behind her back and her belly in the way, it was nearly impossible. The door slammed shut, trapping her inside. The air was thick, the faint scent of old cigarettes and sweat lingering in the car. Maya closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. She had been in worse situations before. She had faced dangerous criminals, uncovered deep corruption, stared down threats that would send most people running. But this was different. This was supposed to be a safe space. The car started moving, and Maya forced herself to think clearly. She had to figure out what was happening. Reynolds had arrested her without cause, ignored her rights, and dismissed her credentials. That meant this wasn't about law enforcement. This was about something else. Maya studied the back of Reynolds' head through the wire partition. The officer's grip on the wheel was tight, her knuckles pale. She looked tense, angry. But why? Maya replayed the last few minutes in her mind. She had been leaving a cafe. Nothing unusual. She hadn't broken any laws. So why had Reynolds stopped her? Had she been following her? A thought struck her. Was this about race? The possibility made Maya's stomach turn. She had dealt with discrimination before, both as a black woman and as an FBI agent, but never like this. Never in a way that felt so deliberate, so targeted. The car took a sharp turn, and Maya braced herself against the seat. The city lights blurred past, but she could tell they weren't heading toward the nearest police station. Her pulse quickened. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded. Reynolds didn't answer. Maya's heart pounded. This wasn't just an arrest. This was something else. And she needed to find out what, before it was too late. Maya's mind raced as she watched the unfamiliar streets roll past through the patrol car window. The city was slipping away, giving way to darker, quieter roads lined with abandoned buildings and empty lots. This wasn't the route to the precinct. She knew that for sure. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She shifted uncomfortably in the back seat, struggling against the cuffs. Her wrists ached, and her belly pressed awkwardly against her thighs. She wasn't just in danger. Her baby was too. "Where are we going?" she asked again, keeping her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. Still Reynolds said nothing. Her grip on the steering wheel was like a vice, her jaw clenched tight. The woman hadn't said much since shoving Maya into the car, but there was something unsettling in the silence. A deep tension, like she was fighting something within herself. Maya's instincts told her this was more than just a bad cop abusing her power. There was something personal here. But what? The glow of streetlights flickered across Reynolds' face. The officer's eyes darted to the rearview mirror, meeting Maya's for the briefest second before looking away. Maya caught something in that glance. A flicker of doubt. Crack in the mask. That was her way in. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "You don't want to do this," she said carefully, watching Reynolds' shoulders stiffen slightly. "Whatever this is, it's not too late to stop." Reynolds' knuckles whitened against the wheel. Maya pressed on. "I don't know what you think I did, but I promise you, you're making a mistake." A bitter laugh escaped Reynolds' lips. "Oh, I know exactly who you are," she muttered. Maya frowned. "Then you know I'm not a threat. I'm an FBI agent, for God's sake. And I'm pregnant." She let the last part hang in the air, hoping it would strike a nerve. For the first time since the arrest, Reynolds reacted. Her fingers twitched slightly on the wheel, like she was gripping too tight. But she didn't speak. Maya studied her carefully. If Reynolds knew who she was, then this wasn't random. But why would a local cop have a personal issue with an FBI agent? Then another thought hit her. Was this even about her? Or was it about something bigger? Maya's mind flipped through possible cases she had worked on. Corruption, organized crime, federal investigations that made enemies out of powerful people. Had she gotten too close to something? The car suddenly slowed down, jerking Maya forward. She twisted in her seat, trying to see where they were. An empty lot. And stuff. No buildings, no people. Just a dead-end road surrounded by overgrown weeds. Panic flared in Maya's chest. Reynolds put the car in park and let out a slow, deliberate breath. Then finally she turned around to face Maya. "I don't care who you work for," Reynolds said, her voice low but sharp. "People like you think you can walk around like you own the world. Like you're untouchable." Maya's stomach tightened. "People like me," she repeated. Reynolds' expression darkened. Maya stared at her, piecing things together. The tension, the aggression, the unwillingness to listen. It was hate, plain and simple. But there was more. Something deeper. "You know," Maya said slowly, watching Reynolds carefully, "you don't seem like a cop who's just following orders. This feels personal." Reynolds' nostrils flared slightly, but she said nothing. Maya took a chance. "So tell me, who put you up to this?" Reynolds' eyes flickered, just for a second. That was it. The confirmation Maya needed. She wasn't acting alone. Someone else was pulling the strings. And now Maya had to figure out who, before it was too late. Maya's heart pounded as she sat locked in the back of the patrol car, staring at Reynolds. The officer's eyes flickered with something, hesitation, maybe even fear, but she masked it quickly, tightening her jaw. The way she gripped the steering wheel, the way she refused to answer certain questions, it was all adding up. She wasn't just acting on impulse. Someone else was behind this. Maya inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. Her hands, still cuffed behind her back, were starting to go numb, but she pushed past the discomfort. She had to stay focused. Had to figure out who Reynolds was working for. "I know this isn't about me," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "You're taking orders from someone, aren't you?" Reynolds didn't move, didn't flinch, but Maya saw the way her fingers twitched. It was subtle, but it was there. "You think they'll protect you?" Maya continued, pressing her advantage. "Whoever put you up to this, do you really think they'll take the fall if this goes wrong?" A muscle in Reynolds' jaw tightened. Maya leaned forward as much as she could, her belly pressing uncomfortably against her legs. "Because it will go wrong," she added. "You arrested a federal agent without cause. You took me somewhere off the grid. Do you realize what's going to happen when my team realizes I'm missing?" Reynolds let out a slow breath. "Shut up." Maya didn't. "FBI agents don't just disappear. I was supposed to check in with my partner an hour ago. When I didn't, they started looking. They'll track my last location. They'll pull traffic cam footage, witness statements, anything they need to find me." Reynolds finally turned, her eyes flashing with something close to anger. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Maya met her gaze without hesitation. "I think you don't want to do this." A brief silence stretched between them. Outside, the wind howled through the empty lot, rustling the overgrown weeds. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. Then, suddenly, headlights appeared in the distance. Second car. Maya's stomach clenched. Reynolds exhaled sharply, like she had been holding something in. Then she muttered under her breath. "You had to push, didn't you?" Maya felt cold all over. She had been right. This wasn't just a rogue cop abusing her authority. This was planned. And now, whoever Reynolds was working for was here. The other vehicle slowed as it approached. Sleek black SUV. Tinted windows. No markings. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. This wasn't standard police backup. Reynolds reached for her radio but hesitated. Then, with a frustrated shake of her head, she unhooked her seatbelt and stepped out of the car. Maya twisted in her seat, trying to see who was inside the SUV. But the windows stayed up. No one got out. Reynolds walked over, her posture tense. Maya strained to listen, but she could only make out murmurs. Then suddenly Reynolds took a step back. The driver's side door of the SUV opened. A tall figure stepped out, their face obscured by shadows. Maya's breath caught. Whoever this was, they were the one pulling the strings. And now she was face to face with them. The figure stepped out of the SUV, moving with a quiet confidence that made Maya's skin crawl. She strained to see their face, but the dim glow of the streetlight barely reached them. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. Whoever they were, they had power, enough to make Reynolds nervous, and that was saying something. Maya's breath came slow and steady, but inside her mind was racing. She had faced dangerous people before, but she had always been in control. Right now she was restrained, vulnerable, and completely in the dark about what was happening. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably, her fingers flexing at her sides as the figure stopped a few feet away. "She gave you trouble," the voice was low, smooth, but carried an edge. "Man. Calm but dangerous." Reynolds shook her head. "Nothing I couldn't handle." Maya watched as the man tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a puzzle he was piecing together. Then he stepped closer, just enough for the light to catch his face. Maya's stomach dropped. She knew him. Not personally, but from case files, reports, surveillance photos. This wasn't just some random power-hungry official or corrupt cop. This was Jordan Nash, a high-level government contractor with deep political ties. He had been investigated for shady dealings before, but nothing had ever stuck. He was the kind of man who moved in the shadows, who had connections in places most people didn't even know existed. And now he was here. Maya forced herself to stay calm. "Didn't expect to see you out in the field, Nash," she said. Her voice steady despite the growing unease spreading through her. "What, running out of people to do your dirty work for you?" Nash let out a small, amused chuckle. "Agent Carter. You really do live up to your reputation." His eyes flicked briefly to her stomach. "Though I have to say, I wasn't expecting you to be working so late in your condition." Maya didn't take the bait. "What do you want?" Nash glanced at Reynolds, then back at Maya. "Let's just say, you've become a problem. One that needs to be handled carefully." Maya narrowed her eyes. "I don't work organized crime cases anymore. I've been on leave for months. Whatever you think I know, you're wrong." Nash smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That's the thing about people like you. You don't even realize when you've crossed a line." He took a step closer. "This isn't about what case you're on now. It's about what you've already uncovered." Maya's heartbeat thundered in her ears. That meant this wasn't about some random power play. She had stumbled onto something big. But what? She ran through her past cases in her head, looking for a connection. Was it an old corruption probe? A money laundering ring? Political cover-up? And then suddenly it clicked. The whistleblower case. Months ago, before she had stepped back from active duty, she had started looking into a financial scandal involving private defense contractors. Money disappearing, government contracts being funneled into shell companies. Billions of dollars unaccounted for. She had barely scratched the surface before the case was reassigned. She hadn't thought much of it then. Just another political red tape situation. But now, with Nash standing in front of her, she realized the truth. She hadn't been taken off the case. She had been silenced. And now they were making sure she stayed that way. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears as Nash watched her. His expression unreadable. The pieces had finally clicked into place. This wasn't just about her. This was about something much bigger, something they had been trying to keep buried. And now they had decided she was too much of a liability to let walk away. But they had made a mistake. They had underestimated her. Maya took a slow breath, steadying herself. "So what's the plan, Nash?" she asked, forcing calm into her voice. "You make me disappear. Cover it up like you've done with everything else." Nash smirked slightly, but there was no amusement in his eyes. "You give me too much credit. I prefer simpler solutions." Maya's skin prickled. She glanced at Reynolds, searching for any sign of hesitation. The officer had been following orders up until now, but there was something in her posture, something rigid, uncertain. Nash was controlling this situation, but Reynolds was still an unpredictable factor. And that was Maya's opening. She shifted slightly, testing the cuffs behind her back. They were tight but not impossible. She just needed one opportunity. One moment of distraction. Nash took a step closer, lowering his voice. "I'll be honest with you, Agent Carter. This could have been avoided if you had just stayed out of it. But you people never learn, do you?" There it was again. That word. You people. Maya met his gaze, holding it steady. "And by you people, you mean what exactly?" Nash's expression flickered just for a second. Annoyance, maybe even frustration that she had called it out so directly. But he recovered quickly, letting out a low chuckle. "Always looking for a fight." Maya clenched her jaw. This man had power, money, connections. But he had one fatal flaw. His arrogance. He believed he was untouchable. That was something she could use. She needed to stall. "So, tell me," she said, leaning back slightly against the seat. "How deep does it go? The missing funds, the shell companies. I'm guessing it's bigger than just you." Nash's smirk didn't falter, but something in his eyes shifted. "It's cute that you think you still have a play here." Maya's mind worked fast. He hadn't denied it. That meant she was right. And if she was right, then there was still a way out. She just had to act now. A sudden noise crackled through Reynolds' police radio. Static, followed by a sharp voice. "Unit 7, respond. We have reports of an unauthorized traffic stop matching your location. Confirm status." Nash's smirk vanished. He turned sharply to Reynolds, his tone low but firm. "Turn it off." Reynolds hesitated. That single second of doubt was all Maya needed. She moved fast, twisting her wrists hard against the cuffs, forcing the metal to shift just enough. Pain flared, but she ignored it. In one fluid motion, she kicked the door with everything she had, slamming it open just as Nash turned back to her. She hit the ground hard, rolling onto her side. The impact sent a sharp jolt of pain through her belly, but she pushed past it, scrambling to her feet. Reynolds cursed and reached for her weapon. "Don't!" Maya shouted, spinning toward her. "Think about what you're doing." Reynolds hesitated again. That was her mistake. Before she could react, the distant wail of sirens cut through the night air. Backup was coming. Nash's expression darkened. For the first time, he looked unsure, like the situation was slipping from his control. He turned to Reynolds, his voice sharp. "Handle it." But Reynolds didn't move. Maya took a step forward, chest heaving. "It's over," she said. "You know it is." For a moment, the three of them stood frozen in the tension. Then, in one last act of desperation, Nash turned, reaching into his jacket. A spotlight flooded the scene as multiple police vehicles skidded to a stop, doors flying open. "Hands where we can see them," a commanding voice shouted. Maya didn't blink. She didn't move. She just watched as Nash, the man who had thought himself untouchable, slowly raised his hands. Reynolds dropped her head, exhaling shakily as she did the same. It was over. But just as the officers approached, as Maya felt the weight of everything settle over her, Nash turned to her one last time. And he smiled. Slow, knowing smile. Like he still had one last card to play. The flashing red and blue lights reflected in Maya's tired eyes as officers swarmed the scene, securing Nash and Reynolds. The air was thick with tension, but beneath it all, there was something else, relief. It was over. At least for now. An officer rushed to Maya, helping her out of the patrol car. "Agent Carter, are you all right?" His voice was firm but laced with concern. Maya exhaled, nodding. "I'm fine," she said, though she wasn't sure if that was entirely true. Her wrists ached from the cuffs, her body was exhausted, and her mind was still racing, replaying everything that had just happened. But she was standing. And she was alive. Nash was being led toward one of the police vehicles. His hands now cuffed in front of him. Even in that moment, He didn't look like a man who had lost. He didn't fight, didn't resist, he just stood there, calm, composed. When his eyes met Maya's, that same smug smile was still on his face. "This isn't over," he murmured just loud enough for her to hear. "You think you won, but you don't even know what game you're playing." Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't let his words shake her. She had heard enough threats in her career to know that men like Nash thrived on intimidation. But the difference between him and her. She didn't back down. She took a step closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You messed up, Nash," she said, keeping her tone steady. "You thought you had control, but you didn't. And now, you're going to answer for everything." His smile faltered just slightly. Maya didn't wait for a response. She turned, walking toward the other officers as they began collecting evidence, securing the scene. A familiar voice called her name. She turned to see Agent Daniels, her partner, rushing toward her. "Maya!" His face was a mix of relief and frustration. "What the hell happened? We've been looking for you everywhere." Maya let out a shaky breath. "It's a long story." Daniels glanced at Nash, then at Reynolds, who was sitting on the ground with her head in her hands. "Looks like a hell of a story." Maya nodded. "And it's not over." Daniels studied her for a moment before sighing. "We'll figure it out. But first let's get you checked out." "You okay?" Maya placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the faintest movement from her baby. A reminder of why she fought so hard. Of why she couldn't give up. She nodded. "I will be." Hours later, after statements were given, after Nash and Reynolds were taken into custody, after the chaos had settled, Maya sat in the back of an ambulance, sipping a bottle of water. Daniels leaned against the doorframe. "You know this isn't the end, right?" Maya smirked tiredly. I know. The case wouldn't close just because Nash was in cuffs. If he had been bold enough to orchestrate something like this, then there were people above him, people who still needed to be taken down. But Maya also knew something else. She wasn't alone. For months, she had tried to handle everything on her own. She had convinced herself that stepping back meant losing her fight, that taking time for herself and her baby was a sign of weakness. But tonight had proved something different. She had fought. She had survived. And she wasn't done yet. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Maya took a deep breath and let the weight of the night settle. She had won this battle. And whatever came next, she would be ready.